Welcome to the YouTube live of Disha in Australia. We are just starting in a second. Please welcome Saskia on board with us. Hi Saskia, how are you
Hi,
feeling?
everyone. I'm great. Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Yay! We are just starting in a second. Okay. Okay. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Naganwal and Nagamri people. We pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge that the name Varoni was taken from the people of the Wadi Wadi nation without permission, and we are striving to do better for future reconciliation. Hello, namaste, and welcome back to Disha in Australia. This is the finale episode of season 3 of Disha in Australia, and we have a very special guest on board with us. We are live on Voroni Radio as well as on YouTube Live. Hey, Saskia, how are you feeling today?
I am feeling so excited to be here, Disha. Thank you so much. This is such an honor to talk to everyone. The ANU is so dear to my heart because this is where I did my undergraduate degree all the way back in 2001 to 2004, but let's not talk about that.
I'm so honored to have you on board. The first time I met Saskia was around 2 months ago.
About that.
Ago? Yeah.
Couple of months, yeah.
And she has been such a beautiful, incredible soul and also so lively because whenever I see you, you're just like full of color and full of life. And that just, brings an instant happiness on someone's face, whenever a person sees you. So
Thank you. It's no use being boring, people.
Well, you're the most interesting person we know. So thank you so much for coming to the show in Australia today. So as we start our show today, we would like you to introduce yourself, your background, when did you first move to Australia, everything that you want to tell to international students.
Okay, so let's have a go at this, right? So my name is Saskia Keenan. I am the Executive Director for Strategic Sourcing at Synergy Group Australia, which is a Canberra-based consulting firm for government. I'm currently 41 years old, and I'll tell you that because, like I said, I graduated from the ANU in 2004, November 2004, and so much has changed that Disha had to walk me across the campus, and I was like, this looks so different, right? So I moved to Australia as an accompanying minor with my parents in May 1995, just shy of my turning 12 years old.
Oh my God.
So one heck of an age to be moving to the other side of the world. But furthermore, I did not speak a word of English when I arrived. And we arrived on a Thursday.
I could never say that.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Oh
no.
my
So we
God.
arrived on a Thursday, and on Monday, I went to school. Like, literally, I went to school without, probably by Monday, my 3 words of English or so. I remember I was still jet lagged.
You have an incredible memory, though. You remember I arrived on Thursday and then I was in school on Monday.
I think that's probably trauma causing those memories.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
probably.
get it.
So it's like such a typical migrant experience, right? My parents bought a business, and I instantly I picked up English really quickly, but then I was their business manager and their translator and everything, and I was a kid, so it was really quite cool. But I think more to the point is that my parents' qualifications were not acknowledged or accepted, whatever the word is, right? Missing the word here, in Australia. So my parents left high-flying careers in Germany. So I should have said that. So I came from Germany. And they were literally cleaning 2 months later to keep us all afloat because moving to Australia, I think, cost more than they had originally anticipated, particularly the startup costs of being here. So we got permanent residency, and then I gained Australian citizenship about I think about 7 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really big experience for a kid, but I actually think it's really important to acknowledge what a big scary step it is for anyone to move to the other side of the world,
Yeah.
or to a country where you don't speak the language. And for me, reflecting back now that I'm the age that my parents were when they moved to Australia, it's like, wow, what a big step. And looking back on it now, it's hugely inspirational because they took such a big leap to do what's right for their family, but into this massive uncertainty. And I just want to acknowledge the international students out there, particularly, and yourself, right, who've made this big, scary leap and are just absolutely owning it. So well done, everyone. Give yourselves a pat on the back because it's a big, big thing.
Absolutely. And it is so beautiful to hear your own journey and so much that I could relate to, because the first time I moved to Australia was last year when I was 18 years old.
Oh, gosh.
And I remember my parents just left me at the Delhi airport. I was left on my own devices with zero people I knew, zero connections, and just started a life from scratch when I first entered Sydney.
And look at you. You're here and you're like absolutely killing it. Like, well done to you. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. I feel like it wasn't something that I knew was going to happen. It had so much uncertainty, as you also mentioned, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going to happen as soon as I enter Australia, or as soon as I just go to a new country, like what sorts of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I have never traveled abroad before. So Australia was my first time ever going to an international flight and going to a new country. And then you're just there. You don't know anything. Then I was stopped at the immigration because I had so much food.
Because your mum packed your bag for
Yes.
you. Yes.
My mum packed my bag, and I told her, do not put these things that are not allowed according to the Australian immigration. She put butter in my bag.
Oh, no. We do have butter in Australia, Disha's mum.
I know, right? Like, if my mum, you're going to hear it. I know you're going to hear it after I upload it, but Australia has butter. I don't need Amul butter. My mom packed everything, like as if I would not have any food in Australia. There are no grocery shops, there are no clothing shops, no nothing. I came with 5 pairs of clothes and a bag full of food.
Yeah, well, you got 5 pairs. That's like a week's worth of clothing there. You're right.
That was planned because my mom sent me a big parcel of clothes that was supposed to arrive in 5 days. That's why
it did not, I bet you.
It did.
It did. That's amazing.
I mean, instead of 5, it took 7 days, but at least it arrived, And I was like, okay. So she counted the amount of outfits I would require for those 7 days. Yeah, but that was my experience. But as we are talking about, like, when you first moved to Australia, so how was your initial experience? Like, if you could recall back some of your memories.
So my initial experience, while a bit scary at times, but I actually started school in Sydney. So my parents moved to the Snowy Mountains to buy a business there, as I've mentioned. But I stayed in Sydney for the rest of the school term because, it's a German thing to do. Leave your 12-year-old behind in a different city, staying in a friend's granny flat. It's totally fine, getting themselves to school every day. And sorry, I'm just going to apologise. Like, my eye keeps watering. I'm actually really struggling with hay fever today because Canberra, right? So I'm just going to keep wiping my eyes, so apologies. But it was actually quite great. And I asked my mum about this, and I said, well, when did I actually learn English? And when did I start fitting in as such? And she said, oh, well, we came and visited you in 3 weeks later in Sydney and picked you up from school, and we were walking back to the house where I was staying, and you were just chatting with this friend called Holly. And unfortunately, I've lost contact with Holly. So Holly from Normanhurst West Primary School, if you're listening, love to catch up. But so it only took about a few weeks, but I remember just being so welcomed and fitting in so well and being included so quickly in Sydney. At least it was a little bit different later on, but overall I think it was a really positive experience. And of course it helps when you're this outgoing person anyway, which, in case you haven't picked up that yet, I am. But it was a really lovely transition. And then moving to join my parents in the mountains during the school holidays, And the Snowy Mountains of Australia are just an amazingly beautiful
Yeah.
place. And then I started another new school, and it was fine, you know. And English came quickly, and friends came fairly quickly. So while scary, and while I make a joke about, you know, you remember strange things, it was actually a great experience. And I am eternally grateful to my parents that they made that choice for themselves and for me. And I'm an only child, so it's only me.
Well, that's really beautiful that you that you felt welcomed and accepted, and were also able to form friends. And look at you now, just slaying and girl bossing.
I'm just making it up, like literally just making it up like everybody else, right?
No, you are an incredibly amazing
Thank you.
soul.
But you know, it takes one to know one.
I remember when I first moved, like last year in February, I got a very bad allergy.
Yeah, February, yeah, you would have. The fluffy stuff that's currently flying around is also around in February. That's what I'm reacting to, by the way.
So I got a really, really, really bad allergy, and it was my fourth day in Australia, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I have no idea because I've never had this bad allergy ever in my life. And then I was like, I don't have my parents here. I don't know anyone here. What am I gonna do? And then I went to the ANU Medical Center, and to this date, no one knows what I was allergic to.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
So what did you do? What did they just give you, like massive antihistamines?
Yes, they gave me antihistamines. They gave me so many medicines. They gave me some lotions and creams.
Oh no.
None of it helped. It just costed me so much money in my initial days. And then I went to so many hospitals like the Calvary, Northern Canberra. That's why I know the names, because I was there.
Welcome to Australia. Feel free to have an allergy straight away.
So I was like super, super stressed and a bit depressed, like what's happening. And then all of a sudden, there were some relatives of mine that appeared that I never knew existed.
Yeah.
Because my parents were obviously doing something from their end to find some connection. So all of a sudden, people that I don't know existed are my some close distant relatives that just appeared.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, you're gonna help me now.
Did they bring butter?
Oh, they did bring butter.
Excellent. All good
That
then.
was a homemade Indian butter. So my mom was very happy to see that I was having the homemade Indian butter that the immigration office took away from me. Anyways, so well, actually they helped me a lot in terms of going to the hospitals and stuff because it was really hard. But none of the medicines were actually really helpful. And you know what helped?
What's that?
A $5 Vaseline bottle.
Wow.
I was healed in like 2 weeks.
Wow. It's amazing.
It took me around 5 weeks to discover that I need Vaseline. But yeah.
So Vaseline on your skin fixed it?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's
petroleum
really
jelly.
crazy.
So Vaseline is actually a brand of petroleum jelly, which is literally a byproduct of fuels production, but has great moisturizing qualities.
Absolutely. I have no idea about those sorts of sources, but thanks for that knowledge.
Yeah, there you go. That's a random trivia fact that you will definitely need again, I can assure you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know how it worked, but I was like wearing the full glossy face every day. I used to live in a residential college last year, and so we had like common kitchens and common washrooms, and my face was always glowing with like Vaseline because there was so much Vaseline on my face.
Disha with a healthy glow.
That's Vaseline glow. But it helped. In 2 weeks' time, all the allergy was gone. It felt like I never ever had an allergy.
That's crazy.
That's really crazy.
Wow. I'm so sorry you had that experience. You know, it's generally not that bad, I think.
Yeah.
But well done, you know, for resilience and staying in there, because I would imagine that you would have had a lot of thoughts of, this is not for me, I'm going home.
Yeah, that's true. I had a lot of thoughts on that, but at the same time, I also felt that I was very open to the experiences that I was facing. So, being a psychology student, you employ a lot of cognitive thinking. So every time I used to like feel anything negative artwork, and that's when I started my Disha in Australia scrapbook. So that was the beginning of Disha in Australia.
That's fantastic.
Yes, and I made a scrapbook of all the lovely moments that I had. I took the printouts. I made like a very cute scrapbook,
Love that.
and that's how I was mitigating it. And then I finally discovered Vaseline. I was really happy. Vaseline saved me, so thanks to Vaseline.
Are you being paid for this promotion?
No, I'm
because you
not.
certainly will should be.
I should be.
Yeah,
I should start contacting
Go
them.
and talk to Johnson and Johnson for some product placement.
Well, that's my first experience in Australia. But now let's move on to your experiences in terms of your academic life and your educational experiences. Uni, we know that you graduated from ANU. What were the things that were how they were back then versus now, and any sorts of hardships that you faced because you were not particularly from Australia?
Okay, so it's interesting that you ask about uni because uni was great overall. So I did not channel my negative experiences into positive things, such as journaling and meditating and drawing, as you did. I spent a lot of time at the uni bar that is now no longer there. I noticed as we sort of walked past. So the old uni bar was my hangout. So I had a fantastic academic experience for my undergraduate degree. I did a bachelor's of international relations. I lived here on campus.
Yeah.
When Fenner Hall was still on Northbourne Avenue.
Oh wow!
Right. So Fenner Hall was on the corner of Northbourne Avenue and Apima Street, which is a couple of k's away from here. Luckily, there was a bus that would take you home straight from the uni bar to Fenner Hall late at night.
Really?
Yeah, it's a true story.
Oh my god. I could never imagine that. That's Fenner Hall.
Yeah, that's Fenner Hall over there now. Yeah. So it used to be like a couple of kilometers away.
Wow.
Yeah, and all of these buildings were not here. This was all like a big open grassy area.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so happy days there. I actually found secondary school really quite challenging in parts, particularly early on, and maybe that's because I was in a remote rural area. Actually, it's only about an hour and a half's drive from Canberra, but I experienced a lot of racism, and that was really quite hard because I don't think I had the skills to bat back what people were saying at me. I have them now, and unfortunately I still use them a lot. But when you're sort of 12, 13, 14 years old, when someone's calling you a Nazi just because you happen to be German, that's really not awesome. And as I was preparing to come on this fantastic show, I was thinking, geez, I wonder if a lot of the listeners are actually having a similar experience now, right? Yeah. Where they're at this uni experiencing similar racism right now just because of their background or their ethnicity or their identity. And that actually made me really sad to think about because you would hope we've progressed past that. Have you seen that? Has that been your experience? Sorry, turning the tables on Disha now.
So, there is certainly a certain level of racism that people face, especially international students. But I would say that it isn't like a lot because Australia is a very multicultural country, and now it's even more because like everywhere you see people who are from different parts of the world or their parents moved in. So everyone has some sort of multicultural identity in a way. But in terms of my experience, I did experience like second-hand racism. So one of my friend is from Bangladesh, and we were at the National Museum of Australia, and then it was just like the feeling of getting ignored, like you do not exist in that place, and just felt ignored, or you're just not standing there. And it was crazy because she was asking this person to like click a photo of her, and she said once, twice, thrice to one person. They didn't even look at her.
That's crazy.
And then
who does that?
I don't know. And then to the second person, same thing. Third person, same thing. And I was standing there looking. I was like, what?
I can't believe
I've never seen that.
And that was in the last year.
Yeah, that was last year. That was last year.
That is so not Australian.
That is so not Australian. I would say that now because I have had interactions with a lot of Australians, but at that time I had no interaction. So I was like, oh, that doesn't sound very
No,
homely feeling, you know?
no.
And apart from that, I would say in workspaces, I haven't really experienced in terms of like particularly targeting, but I remember once in my retail job, I had this experience with this one lady when she was like, people like you just want to stay here, just like very informal remarks and like,
People like you, we want to have stay here. You're going to be a psychologist. That's an occupation of demand. So,
yeah.
just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't like something that's set, or like it shouldn't be generalized to
Yeah.
people that are coming. They might just come here for an experience or for study and want to go back and do something
Yeah.
for their country. But I felt it was more about generalization that through that racism was stemming to, but I didn't experience it like in front. Like there are microaggressions, people carry a lot of passive aggressiveness and microaggressions, but it wasn't very direct towards me.
Yeah. At least it wasn't direct. But I'm sorry that's happened to you, because that's not awesome. It's not okay, and it's never acceptable, and it's not the Australian way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a chance to work with Australians since this year, and I really, really love them, especially my manager. I call her my Aussie mom.
Oh, lovely.
So, and she's so lovely. We had a Mother's Day celebration too. It was so cute because she's just so nice, and every time I just feel like overwhelmed, and she just feels like my mother, and I can just tell anything to her, and
Yeah.
it's just so beautiful. And every time I'm around her, I feel happy, and I feel like there's someone that I can fall back to. And same with, I've had so many beautiful experiences with people around me that I just feel so grateful all the time. Like this morning, also, I received this really beautiful text by this person that I was teaching because she had her exam today and she's in Newcastle. And I was teaching her psychology. And then she sent me this big message saying thank you. And I was like, that's that just felt like a dream because I started as a student, but now I also do tutoring. And then you are a teacher and a student, and you feel both sides. And when you're making a little bit impact in someone's life and they just thank you, and you feel you have actually done something and you have earned that thing, and that just tears me up sometimes.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think it's one of the greatest gifts we can give to people younger than us. And obviously, it's probably not much of an age difference for you. But for me now, particularly when we have people where I work at the beginning of their career, and is helping them overcome those initial challenges and setting them off on, a really purposeful career path, and seeing them succeed is just the most wonderful thing. And celebrating in each other's success is just the most amazing thing, because it's like if we're all working together, this sounds so dodgy. If we're all working together, you get so much further ahead, and that ability to guide someone, I think, is such a lovely gift to give. But I also think, and you might have this as you sort of progress in your career, but I feel there's also a bit of obligation, right? Like we have people who helped us, and I certainly had people who helped me early on in my career, and I've still got people helping me now. But we have an obligation to pass that on. And conversely, I'm the mother of 2 daughters. Geez, I hope when they enter the workforce or when they are at university, that someone will take them under their wing and actually guide them and shepherd them through this really quite challenging part of their life.
I definitely agree with that idea of pay it forward. And whenever I feel like I have been shown so much kindness and so much love, it just feels like you do the same thing, and you want to be kind too, you want to be like them too, and you want to pay that kindness forward, and that makes you so happy. And because I never worked when I was back home, and the first time I ever worked was in Australia, so all the time I've seen like people supporting me and like cheering me up, or my parents, my teachers, my peers, whenever I do something great. But for the first time in my life, when I switched role and I was a teacher, I was supporting students and like, yes, you can do this, yes, I trust in you. And that was the most beautiful feeling, and seeing them actually succeed, I just felt so proud. And yeah, that's one of my greatest joy of life. I remember last year I had a student who had autism, and he failed an exam, and then his mother just asked me, like, do anything but just let him pass that exam. He not only passed that exam, he scored 70 out of 80 marks in that exam
That's
that he failed.
amazing.
I
That's a
I,
distinction, right?
yes, it's a
Yeah.
distinction.
Wow.
I would never forget that,
Good on
because
him.
I would never forget that, because I remember when we started, he had zero idea about it, and I used everything. I used to like think about it. How can I make it better for
Yeah,
him? How
yeah,
can
yeah.
I do these things?
How
Or
can we make it accessible for
yeah,
his slightly different brain, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
how can I use whatever I've learned in psychology and apply it when I'm teaching him maths? How can I do this? And yeah, it just changed everything, and I just felt so grateful, because my mom is a teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just like passing on that beautiful instincts of like teaching, and
Nice.
it's one of the greatest joy that I have. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. Thanks for sharing that story.
Thank you for sharing your journey in ANU, because oh wow, I never knew Fenner was that far away.
It sure was. Yeah.
Okay, so let us move on to the next segment, which is careers. So when straight out of uni, how did you start work, and how was your first experience,
So
your
I'm
first
going to go
job?
back.
Okay.
I'm going to go back, right?
Yeah.
Because I actually think so you said you didn't work before you started uni,
Yes.
so I did.
Oh wow.
And I think that's a cultural thing. Like, my 12-year-old is now babysitting, so she's already working as
Yes.
such, right? But I've had just this most weird and fabulous and varied career, and totally not what I expected. And we'll get into that later, because you're going to ask me about some advice. I'm like, just follow cool opportunities. But anyway, I had my first job when I was 13.
Oh wow.
And I was the boot scrubbing queen of the ski hire. So when people hire skis, when they return their skis and ski boots, they have to be cleaned. And that was my job. It was a great first job.
Wow.
Let me just tell you, it was a great first job. Not glamorous, but it was a job. Made some money.
That's great.
Then I obviously worked in my parents' business until I moved to university. And while at uni, I worked in hospitality, and I tutored like you. And I actually worked here at Toad Hall and at Burton and Garron Hall, just, the admin people at the front. I was one of the admin people. And out of university, I also worked in hospitality. I worked in a panel beaters workshop. I was cleaning, I was vet nursing, and I worked in a pharmacy. And I actually had a second job right until just before my eldest daughter was born, so 12 years ago.
Oh wow.
Because it takes a lot to buy a house in Australia. You have got to hustle. That's not awesome, but that's how it is.
Oh my god.
So yeah, so I mentioned these not because they're part of my career as such, but because I think it's really important to acknowledge that those jobs contributed to the skills that I brought into my career, right?
Absolutely.
So we often discount them, but they teach you a service mentality, which is super important in, I think, every job. They teach you how to manage stakeholder relationships. They teach you how to have difficult conversations. They provide a pretty safe environment to sort of make your first mistakes in, which, will then lessen the impact on your first real job.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, hence my mentioning. So I'm just going to turn the page on my notes that I prepared for all you lovely people. And then I actually joined the Australian Public Service, which I had to get citizenship for. Because, but let's not discuss that, because someone may not have read the fine print. So it was a very quick citizenship ceremony. And I joined as an executive assistant. So, and I think that's one of the things I want to impart on people listening. It's a graduate program is not all that there needs to be. There is actually other ways in. An executive assistant was a lovely, quick way in. And that was just a temporary contract. I didn't want to be an EA, but I needed a job. And I thought, this might be a really interesting way forward. And it was actually a really great first job. And it was for a guy called Abel Rizvi, who's a commentator on Australian media these days.
Oh my god.
And look him up. He is incredibly knowledgeable, a fantastic man, and a great first leader to have worked for. And I then got offered a permanent job, and I spent most of my time in the Now Home Affairs portfolio. So then the Department of Immigration, including the people who stopped you and collected your butter off you. And I did a mix of policy and program management and operational stuff. I worked in some really politically sensitive portfolios. I did some free trade agreement negotiations. Cool job.
Wow.
Not exactly sustainable, but it was a really cool job because you just work 24/7 in those jobs, right? And I did a lot of challenging stuff and a lot of stuff where you have to put your own views aside and just get on with the job. And then I went into central support functions like procurement and contract management. And then I left the APS after about 15 years and went into private industry. And that's where I am now.
Wow. That has been a huge experience with so many things.
It's actually pretty linear. Because you join and then you just you go and you get promoted and eventually you go, I might actually try something different, and then I left. But it was an absolutely fantastic career. I met a lot of really smart people along the way, did some really interesting work, traveled to some really cool places around Australia. Shout out to Leonora, which is halfway between Perth and Alice Springs. Alice Springs is the middle of Australia and Perth is in Western Australia. So the airstrip when I landed there the first time was dirt. So interesting times. But so we had some really fantastic opportunities.
That's incredible. That's really lovely. One thing that I want to mention here that you mentioned is how you started in working in terms of first in hospitality, and then this is 20 years before, right, when you were in union, when you were working in hospitality and stuff like that. And you mentioned about the cultural differences. So back to my culture, it's not really common for students to work until they graduate. So they don't work any job at all until they graduate. And so I realized that's also the reason we do not really understand the value of labor until we graduate.
Wow.
So I didn't understand it too until I started my very first job. And then I finally knew the value of money, which I never knew, because I never had to, earn money. I was always given that money. I never understood that how precious it was or how hard it is to earn money.
Oh yeah, it's hard.
And how hard it is to manage your expenses, and you have to set this certain margin for your rent, for your savings and stuff. I never did that. So that was the first time I ever understood the value of labor. And I remember sitting at the Canberra Centre Mall, because my first job was in retail. So at the Canberra Centre Mall, and I was seeing some teenagers throwing the McDonald's drink bottles and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, who taught them? They don't know anything. And then I reflect it back on too, because if that was me a couple of years ago back home as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, I would see it as a fun thing. That's a cool thing. But now I see it as, you don't understand the people who are going to clean this up for you.
That's right.
You're making a job hard for them.
Yeah. Or the 10 cents refund that you could get off that bottle.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And also because so you understand how everyone is sort of equal in that level, because everyone starts from scratch and then they build a life for themselves, which I would have never understood if I was back home, because it's also a lot about status and a lot of hierarchy, and then people who are from this particular family do not work these sort of jobs, or they are just supposed to, after uni, go to a better paying job that pays you a lot of money, and that's the ideal Indian standard of working. So I grew up with that standard, and then when I came here, that was the first time I pushed myself out of that limit and to actually understand and see how to actually understand things from scratch, and how can I transfer those skills, because I learned sales from my retail job, and that's what I apply on my freelancing work, and that's selling, because now I know how to sell it to the Australian market. What are the things that you say, and what are the key tactics and stuff. So you learn a lot of soft skills that you can transfer into
Yeah.
each role. And I remember when I was interviewing at the Canberra Innovation Network, and they asked me, what did you learn from it? And I made an entire LinkedIn post of 5 things I've learned through my retail job that I'm
See, I love that.
yeah, because it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, especially value of labor and the importance of money,
Yeah.
which I never knew. So
And in Australian culture, that is so valued, that hustle,
yeah,
that, you know, the fact that you can work hard, you can get in there, you do what needs to be done, and you can demonstrate that you are quite flexible is so valued. And now, as someone who employs people, that's something we look for as well. You
Yeah.
know, like if we see that someone's worked at McDonald's, for example, not getting paid for by this place by McDonald's, but we goes like, oh, this person's worked at McDonald's. They understand service mentality. They can deal with difficult customers.
Yeah.
They can follow processes. They can follow procedures because McDonald's does a really good training program. So we're really
Yes.
excited to see that.
Yeah.
But from what you were saying, that's not obviously not the case everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And also how McDonald's is so fast paced. Like there are customers every second
Yep.
there, and you have to be so quick
Yep.
in decision making and things
That's
like
right.
that. And same with retail, because sometimes there are like so many customers. You
Yeah.
have to manage the people who are in the changing room, getting them clothes, taking their clothes, doing their billing. And you just like sometimes by yourself at retail, and you have to do so many things.
Yep.
But I do feel because everyone has been in that area, they understand, and they don't like, you know, do a lot of pressure on you. They're like, oh, that's fine, I'm okay standing.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter, you know. And that was another thing I learned, which was empathy and people actually trying to understand
Yep.
your situation.
Yes.
And yeah, that was really helpful, because when I now do tutoring, I try to understand from my students' perspective, like how do you feel about it, and then
Yep.
then I think about what can I do to make this thing more accessible to you. This is what you're lacking, and this is what I'm
Yep.
putting. So yeah, a lot of transferable skills. But because I'm a very reflective learner, I just think about situations a lot, and it's like, oh, that's what I learned, and that's how I'm going to apply it. So yeah, but very important to learn things from scratch so that you understand things deeply and you understand the value of labor.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. So let us go to the career section, as you were mentioning. So, what are your tips for uni students when they first start their jobs, or how do they get into different opportunities and resources? What are the best things we can gain out of uni?
Cool. So I think overall, we need to be really, really aware of the confidence gap. And that's particularly for you young female identifying students out there, right? Note the Hewlett-Packard study of 2014. I included this in here just for you, right?
I love that. Thank you so much for
no
that.
worries, no
because
worries.
you have actually
Yeah,
prepared so
there's
much.
actually I've put some thought into this because I think there's actually a real there's onus to make this time that people are spending with us valuable for people. So so have a look at the Hewlett-Packard study on the confidence gap, 2014. So what that shows is that women or women identifying people tend not to apply for jobs unless they are 100% qualified.
Oh my God.
But I'm actually, from personal experience, this is very unscientific, but going to extrapolate that international people do this as well. So unless I'm 100% qualified and meet every single criterion and sub-criterion, I can't do the job.
Yeah.
That's not true. It's so not true, right? Male identifying persons tend to apply for things when they are about 60% there, right? So that's what's called the confidence gap. So just be really mindful of that. You can learn skills. Everyone can learn skills. Everyone here at university, by being at university, you're showing you can learn.
Absolutely.
Technical skills. So what you need to consider is what cultural fit, what energy, what ability to engage, what soft skills can I bring? And you've mentioned soft skills a couple of times now. And you know what? If you've applied for a job and you don't get it, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
You are still the same,
Nothing happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Worst case scenario, you've gotten some job application writing experience. If you
Yeah.
made it to interview, you got some interview experience.
Yeah,
That's not a bad thing, right? So in general, I think uni particularly, my advice would be to use this opportunity to broaden your horizons. And I think we've talked a lot about different experiences. So, you know, take this opportunity, and this comes back to your question too, to meet lots of people and then cultivate those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you do this amazingly. Like, I follow you on LinkedIn, and now I have to get Instagram, you know. Cultivate those relationships. And that's, you know, something I wish I would have done more in my 20s and probably right into my early 30s, because connections are everywhere, absolutely everything. But you can explain that to your listeners more than I can.
No, you can absolutely. You are a goat here. So it's all on her.
So it's just, you know, connections are, and they're really, you know, you meet people every day, and it's about cultivating those relationships. And it's not cultivating those relationships because you want something from the person, but because you can learn something from the person, right? Absolutely. And that connection might come in quite handy at some stage, not only for yourself, but also for them. You know, Disha and I, as she mentioned, we connected at a conference.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And she's on my show now.
Yeah, and we're connected on LinkedIn, and we're celebrating each other's success on LinkedIn. And even that is just women holding each other up. That's amazing, right?
That's so beautiful.
I'm like, oh, cultivate your connections. And I'm going to give you a little tip there. So LinkedIn, we've mentioned, again, no product placement, sadly enough. Reach out to people, like create and curate your LinkedIn profile, and reach out to people, even if it's just once or twice a year, just to keep that connection alive. And here's my tip. Remember people's birthdays. Like, you might find out someone's birthday, right? And just jot it down, put it in your Google Calendar. Everyone loves it when you message them for their birthday. And that's, you know, if you're needing to reach out to people twice a year, well, that's 50% of your reach outs done right there. Hey, Disha, happy birthday. Have a great day. And you're going to go, that's Saskia. Can't believe she remembered my birthday.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right?
That's so beautiful. When's your birthday?
September 17th.
Okay, it's next year now.
Most common date of birth in Australia, by the way. It's quite disappointing that.
But I'm going to save it now.
So there's my tip. It's a really useful and easy thing to do, because, you know, in the end, you will graduate from university. You will be looking at professional careers. You will put up something on LinkedIn and go, hey, I've graduated. I have no idea what I want to do with my international relations degree. Any thoughts, any ideas, any opportunities? You can bet your bottom dollar, if you've got a good number of collections on LinkedIn, someone's going to go, hey, I know of this internship program. Or, hey, I know of a graduate program. Or, hey, I know someone looking for a decent EA and you do a great job. And voila, you're in.
You're in. Yeah, right? Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I feel your network is your net worth for real in this generation. And,
totally.
Because everything is digital. We are in the world of digital era. It's so much about how you're connecting with people and how well you are in keeping touch with them. So be it by the LinkedIn post, it doesn't mean that you have to, like, you know, send people that I started this job, etc. You just make it on LinkedIn, and everyone can see it. Everyone can see how far you're going, what are you doing right now, and things like that. And that is so important, because I have seen how connections play a huge role, especially in the Australian job market as well, because I feel like every job of mine is through my connections. So
yeah. And look, I get offered jobs and opportunities quite regularly. And I absolutely love where I work and have no real interest in moving on right now. But that's not to say that that's not something I shouldn't be thinking about in the future. Or that's not to say that I might know someone like, well, this is not right for me, but it's right for Jane over here. You should go and talk to Jane. And that goes back to those connections, right? Because I might be doing the right thing by Jane by going, hey, you two should chat. Actually, that's happened. A friend of mine got a job today that I connected her with, which is like super exciting. Hasn't been announced yet, but I'm super pleased for her because I think culturally she'll be a fantastic fit, and it's really valuable community sector work.
That is so exciting, and as well as goes back to how women support each other.
Women supporting each other, you're right.
And connections also, like they see your work, they see what you're doing, they see the value you're bringing to the table.
Yep.
And they would want to help you in whatever way possible. And I feel like, again, it works on give and take. Once you receive something, you always want to pay it forward.
That's
you
right.
always want to get this thing going. And yeah, that's just so beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Going back to the interview tips and what can we do as a student right now, I remember when we were at the ANUCS consulting event, you said one thing about interviews, like
Oh gosh, what did I say?
Yes, that has stuck with me forever, and I used it for my presentation last Thursday, and
I'm scared.
so my presentation was on cognition. I was giving a presentation on cognitive reappraisal, and I mentioned what you said. So what Saskia said was that whenever you are in an interview, instead of being anxious, think about how lucky they are to get 30 minutes.
Oh my God, that's literally all my notes.
She said how lucky they are to have 30 minutes of my life to discover my potential, to discover the things that I have done. And if nothing happens, there was nothing happening anyways. So you still learn a lot of things out of it. But think about when you feel that they're so lucky to have those 30 minutes, you'll feel
That's
more
right.
confident in ways when you're expressing.
Yep.
And I said that in my presentation, and the teacher also came to said, that was really cool. I was like, thanks to Saskia.
Well, thank you, but you've like totally just stolen my example because that was going to be my interview
Oh my
advice.
God.
Like literally just,
But that's coming from
rephrase
you,
it.
so-
Yeah, just rephrase it. Like, time is finite, and these people get to spend 30 minutes or an hour with me of my time,
Yeah.
seeing how awesome I am and what I can contribute.
Yeah,
And if you look at it that way,
that's
you just come across as so much more confident. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, what interviewers often look for is confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not cockiness, big difference, but they're looking for confidence and a
yeah.
willingness to learn and a good attitude and a good cultural fit.
Yeah.
So you can demonstrate a lot of those by having that attitude, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I also mentioned previously as well at Disha In Australia that it's not just about the jobs that are paying you, it's about the things that you have
That's
done
right.
in that job. So I remember in one of the things that I was interviewing for, I took my example of being the vice president at Psychology Society and the events that I helped them hosting it and the people that I got in the society.
Yeah.
And that's also a big thing. You don't have to think that I don't have a professional work experience. You have to think about the things that you have done and
That's right.
how can you basically sell it.
Yeah.
And
those transferable skills you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, right?
Yes, absolutely. And those do not just come from your professional experience.
No,
They come from your personal experiences. They come
Mhm.
from the things that you're involved in society. They come from volunteering. They come from conversations. And even just having certain chats, because I feel Disha In Australia, this show has been such a beautiful journey for me, because I get to like speak with people who have so much experience, and I'm indirectly also getting mentored. So
Two for the price of one.
absolutely. And it is just so amazing for me to hear so many opinions and so many thoughts and so many insights. And as I said before, I reflect and learn. And I always try to take one thing away from whoever I'm meeting, like I took your interview exam. So
Love that.
and when we study psychology, we see that most of our thoughts and processes are surrounded or like are influenced by first 8 people around us.
Mhm.
So I have the power to choose those first 8 people in my life, and I can choose to focus on positivity, or I can choose to focus on
That's right.
people that are pulling you down or you don't feel
Yep.
very comfortable with. But that power is in your hand. So you are always the most powerful person for your life. You are the
Good.
main character here.
Yep.
You decide what you want in your life. And getting back to you, because you are the goat here with interview tips. So that's what my experience has been.
And you're completely right. I think the only other thing I want to add to jobs is your first job out of university.
Mm.
is not going to be the job you have forever. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It won't be.
That's
and
true.
every job has really, really boring bits, like entering timesheets. Right? I don't know what I did 5 minutes ago, let alone what I did this morning. But if you focus on learning on the job, if you focus on bringing your best self, and if you just control your imposter syndrome, you know, you'll do fine. But yeah, you can learn from anything. And at the beginning of your career especially, you've got to hustle pretty hard. And that's okay, because you'll learn a lot through that.
Yes. And a great thing about, as you mentioned before, connecting and going on networking events is you learn a lot through the body language as well.
Oh, yes.
From people.
Yes.
I remember I was at this networking event and I felt like, how do people make other people included? How do you feel that you are also a part of that conversation? Because sometimes you might just go like, I am not wanted here, you know, no one really looks at me or ignores me. But then I saw like, I was at this entrepreneurship club event and everyone there took a step back when they were talking, and if there's a new person entering, just so that they feel included.
Can I just acknowledge that you went to an entrepreneurship event? Like, that's amazing. Like, go to those events, people. Those events are fantastic. I know it's really awkward initially. Don't worry, everybody feels that way. But go put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
And just include yourself in conversations. You can even go as far as to say, hi, my name's Saskia, and I'm including myself in this conversation. No joke, I've done that.
Well, that's one more thing I'm going to take away, because sometimes, like last time I was at this HR's event with zero idea about what HR's field is, because I've not explored
Human
that much.
resources, people. Human resources.
So I was like, hi, I am studying psychology and I am looking for different things my psychology degree could lead me. So HR is one of them, and I'm here to learn.
That's fantastic.
I was just observing and learning and just trying to make connections or whatever they were saying with the knowledge that I previously had.
Nice. Do you find people get nervous when you say you're a psychologist or studying to be a psychologist?
No, I feel like they do say that, oh, that's a very important profession, but I haven't.
Totally.
Yeah, but I haven't, like, instead of like mostly Indians to say like, are you reading my mind? Yes.
Yes, I am. What are you going to do about it?
Yes, I'm analyzing you right now. So what? But yeah, it's really good to introduce yourself as a person studying psychology, because it's really the need of the hour.
Yeah, now. Yeah, totally is. Totally is.
Awesome. So it's almost 7 p.m., but I would want to ask you one last question before we end, which is an advice to your younger self and a reflection to your journey.
Sure, that's actually 2 questions. But, okay, I wrote some notes and I did a bit of a poll of the young people at work today.
Oh my God, you're so prepared.
Thanks to Synergy Group for letting me talk to some of their young people in the office today. So advice I would give to my younger self. I went straight from high school to university. And then I went straight to the workforce. I wish I would have traveled more. While my back was still good enough to put up with dodgy, like, youth hostel beds, because those days have gone, let me tell you.
I'm going to book my flights today.
Yeah, do it. Cairns is amazing. Worry less. And if you are going to worry, because we all do, look into good versus bad worrying, productive versus non-productive worrying. I'll let Disha talk about that at some stage. There's an expression, it's an Australian expression, I'm going to use it anyway, that says P's make degrees. And that means passes make degrees. It's fantastic to get great grades, but don't sacrifice everything else for great grades, because seriously, the other experience you gather are probably more valuable, or at least as valuable. Don't stress too much what's expected of you. Just do you, right? Follow your own path, find your own path, tread your own path. Don't let yourself be tied down too early. Gather really cool experiences, like I said, while your body can still put up with dodgy beds. Your pathway also doesn't have to follow that of others. Your own pathway is your own pathway. Imposter syndrome. If you haven't looked it up, because we mentioned it earlier, look it up and learn about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome gets in the way. It's your
second
enemy.
guessing yourself.
You got to manage that. Everyone gets it, but you've got to manage it because it is not productive at all. And you need to advocate for yourself. And that's actually that's one thing. It's one thing one of our junior lawyers added. You've got to advocate for yourself, believe in yourself, and do what's right for you. And the last piece of advice I wish my younger self would have had is listen to people's advice. Listen to my advice, but only take the advice that's right for you. Generally, for most of us, your parents are only looking out for your best interests. I mean, Disha's mum packed butter, right? But be gentle with them. Even if you don't want to take their advice, just listen to it and be gentle with them because they're looking out for you. And in reflecting on my journey, oh God, thanks ChatGPT for giving me some hints here. I'm really proud of the resilience and strength I've cultivated as a migrant, as a mother, and as a professional, and combining those can be quite difficult at times. Adapting to new cultures and balancing careers can be really, really hard. And also career ambitions with parenting, particularly mothering, and navigating obstacles in the workplace. So I'm really proud of the fact I've built a successful career, and I'm proud of the fact that I can show my daughters that you can build a successful career, but it comes with sacrifice. Just be aware of what sacrifices you're making. And be committed to your family and the real important people in your life, and be a role model. If something's wrong, raise it, have the courage, be strong, and don't lose who you are. And that is it.
Absolutely. That is so beautiful. And there's two things that I want to highlight. One, that you just said, be you, because when you're your authentic self, you're no longer chasing, you're attracting opportunities in your life. And that is very beautiful, because things that are meant for you are going to find their way towards you. And no matter how much negativity happens in your life or how many pathways are blocked for you, no one can block your blessings. So whatever is meant for you will eventually find you. You just don't have to give up on yourself, because you are the biggest project you're working on.
That's beautiful, Disha.
And one more thing that Saskia mentioned was about listen to people's advice but follow what your heart says. Because even though people are looking, sometimes they might be looking for your best interest, but sometimes things might stem from their own beliefs or from their own biases that might not be applicable to you. So think about the things that are actually really adding value to your life and not taking away yourself. So believe in yourself, and you have the capability to achieve the highest of the things that you can imagine.
So true. Well said.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was so beautiful to reflect. I know that our time is over and the next people are in, but since this is the last episode for this season, I want to thank each and every person who was a part of season 3 of Disha in Australia. As we discussed, this season particularly was a lot about self-awareness and growing yourself. So thank you so much to everyone who was a part of this journey, and I will be back next semester with season 4 of the Shine Australia. Thank you so much, Saskia, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It was an absolute honor, and there are so many things I related back to you. And thank you for the advice to your younger self, because I am the first generation of women in my family who would actually have a career.
Wow.
So you are a role model for that, because I see strong independent women, and that's what I want to be. Because stemming back to my culture and my family, women do have a career, but it's first is their family, getting married and having a family, and then their career. And this is I am the first generation who is first building a career. So it's a huge thing, and I look up to women like you who are an example of strong and independent women.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, Disha. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you so much for being here, Saskia. And thank you to everyone who joined in through Voroni Radio, through YouTube Live. This video would be uploaded and we can check on it 10 years down the line with your daughters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. And we end the stream now. Thank you. Yes.